welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at ArtistFirst.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Scott, and I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And we're going to have a topic tonight. We're having it's Mercury retrograde.
Oh, that's true.
It's Mercury retrograde, which has nothing to do with the element Mercury and has something to do with the planet Mercury. But what it basically means is that the interwebs and other electronic devices are on the wonky.
Yeah.
So that may account for some of it, but we are not on the wonky. We are abundantly available.
We are
and
here.
And therefore valueless.
Oh, well, thanks.
And that's our topic tonight. We're doing a topic, we're doing a show on, it relates to abundance, but from a different sort of angle.
Well, the foundation of it is, this is a tendency that we all have, and that is no one values what is always available.
Mm.
And that applies in so many different ways.
So many different ways, indeed. Do you want to go into some of them?
Oh, well, just in general, if you, for instance, are always available to help someone, and there are circumstances where that is absolutely needed. Immediately comes to mind is taking care of babies. You must be available for them whenever they cry because they are truly helpless, and they need that connection to security. But as people get older, if you are interacting with an adult and you're always there helping, to the point where they rely on you for almost everything. You're making the decisions. You're helping them through different problems. Whatever it is that's irritating them, they'll come right to you because you're going to fix it. Again, as I said, when you're dealing with babies and children, absolutely necessary. When you're dealing with adults, you're beginning to develop this habit form. And it's that habit form of assuming that since that person's always been there or that solution has always been there, it's always going to be there. So you begin to take it for granted. Oh, it's always going to be there.
Mm.
And that tendency is something that we all have. But when you're dealing with relationships, you begin to see how that can be a problem.
Mm. Well, it goes right to, the heart of it goes right to what you just said, is that when something is always available to you, you begin to take it for granted. Another good example is people take for granted like their next breath. Now you say, well, you're always going to be able to take the next breath.
Mm-hmm.
Air is always there. It becomes something which falls below the radar, falls below notice. And some of the mindfulness exercises actually have you pay attention to things which are always there. Pay attention to your heartbeat. Pay attention to your breathing. Because why? Because when things are always there, they get taken for granted, and then they get assigned. If something isn't there very often, and you want it, it becomes more and more desirable. You say, well, I can't get this thing. I can't get this thing. Conversely, when something is always there, whether it's a person or an object, it becomes less and less on the present mind. It becomes less and less and more a part of the background. And you tend to value the background very little. You say, well, it's always there. Every time I want this thing, I have to exert no effort. So this is very, very important. This is very, very important. The basis of value, one of the bases of value is whether or not it's available. And if it is available, what does it cost? Now, people say, well, does it cost $10? No. The cost is how much effort, how much work do I have to do to get it? Now, if something is always available, the cost is nearly zero. And cost is instantly associated with value. You don't value things. You don't value things that you take for granted. You say, well, it's always going to be there. Now, Margaret, with objects, you can say, okay, well, air, air is just air and water is just water and so on. However, if they weren't there, even for a very short period of time, you'd notice and you'd start to maybe miss them quickly. But people, Margaret touched on this beautifully. Relationships, people, first of all, we all feel that we, our own persons, have intrinsic value. We're very, 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 very important. And everyone should feel that we're very, very important. And we're very, very important to ourselves. We take ourselves very, very seriously. The ego takes itself very, very, very seriously. It doesn't like to be in any way denigrated or any way made less valuable. However, when you turn it around, when people start to, in relationships, take the other for granted, that relationship is on its way to breaking. It's on its way to being dissolved. It's on its way to falling apart. Because when you take the other for granted, and it can come about in a number of different ways. What Margaret's example was a good one, where you're always there to always help, so that you become part of the background. And the person that is first, they may say thank you, and then they say, well, I don't have to thank them every time. And then they say, well, they're always there anyway, so why bother? And it kind of slowly goes down the old classic slippery slope to the point where it's like you don't even, you no longer notice them. You no longer care for them. You no longer appreciate them. You don't say thank you. You don't do anything. You just literally assume that you drop anything and it'll be caught. You stretch your finger with the slightest desire and it'll be met by this person. This person now becomes less than a person anymore. They become something which just fulfills your needs to the exclusion of all other things. Now you say, well, no one would ever do that. Well, people do that all the time. It's something which you have to do for children because they are, as Margaret said, truly helpless. But it's a drug. Helplessness can be a drug for both the person who is enabling that helplessness in another, and the one who is taking advantage of. And the value equation, the what do you appreciate? What do you what do you put on this relationship? How important is it to you? Becomes warped, and perhaps to the point where it's all about me and it's zero about the other. It's all about me, and this type of relationship will not last long. It's bad for both sides. It's bad for the person. You say, well, it's bad for the person who's always enabling, but it's just as bad and maybe even more toxic for the person who is always taking.
Right. Well, you begin to develop this habit form, and I was always curious to know how that happened. How is it that you begin to make that assumption that it's perfectly all right to assume that this is always going to be there? And realizing as well that societies and cultures also use this as a foundation. Whatever is always going to be there, they have a tendency to take it for granted. Like the service industry is a big one where people assume that they can just demand or abuse their servers, and there's no repercussions. They treat them almost like they're not human.
Like in a restaurant, yeah, absolutely.
Or, excuse me. Or, well, I guess I'm going to go back to it. How does this all kind of begin? And when you're looking at a society, you're first really introduced to this idea that you should be useful. Whatever you're doing or however, you should be useful. Now, when you're helping people, you're being useful. And you feel good about helping other people. But to look at that and say, well, that's really, being useful is a beautiful thing. But then to make what would be the word, a baseline that, well, you only have worth in this society if you're useful in some way. Beauty has nothing to do with it. It becomes this monetary system. You're only useful. You
only have value.
Yes. Your worth is in whether or not you're useful to somebody. It's like, wait a minute. It's like being useful or helping people is a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing when it's a genuine heart-to-heart response. There's a need and you're helping someone. And that satisfaction is wonderful. But as I said, going to a point where you're making it, the only value you have for us as a group is if you do something that we approve of or we like. And you're like, wait, how did that flip happen?
Well, so if you bring it into the economic realm, and you can talk about this as with objects in general, there's very good foundational philosophy here. One of the first foundational philosophies in that realm, and you mentioned it, is utility, and the other one in that realm is how things acquire value. So, and let's not talk about people. Let's just talk about objects, because objects are more properly referred to in this realm. So an object, whatever it might be, has a certain value, and it may be zero, and it may be beyond price, whatever it is, but something in there, in the middle there. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from a couple of different basic things. One of the things that's basic about an object is it useful? Can it do something? Does it feed me? Does it support me in some way? Does it meet some need? So that's its utility, if you will, it's sort of basic utility. And then one of the other things that assigns an object value, whether it's more or less, is its ubiquity. How hard is it to get? Again, air, almost valueless. Diamonds, maybe higher value of some sort or another. But you can start to have a rough scale. And then there's this idea of what I had to do to acquire it. So even if something is, let's say, relatively valueless, but if you have to go to the tippy top of Everest to get it, and you want it, it acquires some value. And then if you go there and get this thing, and then George next to you, who wants to sit on the couch and get it, says, well, I'd like some too, you say, well, I'll go get it for you, but it's going to cost you whatever. This makes sense to people. You say, well, okay, George could go get it himself, and then, it wouldn't cost me anything, and he could have his own, whatever. But if I go get it, and I bring it back, and I give it to George, this is the service part of it. So now I've added value to the thing. I've gone and, climbed Everest, picked up the piece of snow, climbed all the way back down and given it to George. Well, if I just give it to him for nothing, you could say that's nice, but eventually you're going to get tired of climbing Everest to get the thing and giving it to George. You're going to say, well, George, you should give me something back for, something of equal value. I've spent, the last 17 hours going to Everest, Why couldn't you give me? So it acquires a certain value, and there's an idea that you could trade this thing. You say, well, George, I'll give you this thing I got from Everest that you want. You give me something back that I want. This becomes sort of a value system. Now, when you start to plug people into this, it gets a little bit more funny because people aren't objects. People have an intrinsic value, which is sometimes unique. You can certainly say every person is precious and unique, and therefore has an intrinsic value. And then you say, well, this particular person can do something for me, and so for me, they have an additional value, whatever that thing is. They have an additional value. If the thing that the person is doing for me, even though it has an additional value, that I don't value it or that I expect it to be there all the time, then I'm taking something from them without giving anything back. It's like me bringing the piece of snow from Everest to George and keep on giving it to him. Eventually, I get tired of that. Well, in relationships, the same thing happens when you take the other for granted for an extended period of time. However, if you're a person who, in their own egoic, self-centered way, expects that, grows, as you said, Margaret, grows to expect this sort of subservient or enabling behavior, especially if you can, and this has happened throughout human history, put somebody into a different class, let's say, and I don't mean class in the sense of class in the society sense, but in a different class of there's all the real humans, and then there's people who serve the real humans. They're the less people, or maybe they're not even people. They're your server, for argument's sake, at the restaurant. People treat people improperly and incorrectly as though they're inferior to them, and that they're doing something which is not only expected, but not even to be rewarded. It's just my due. And this is where you have these sort of toxic relationships that grow around this concept of objectifying and classing, putting people into a class which is lower. And the lower in this sense is just that I am the one who is to be served, and they're the ones to do the serving.
Right.
And there's no need for me to, whatever I've done to myself in my own egoic way and putting myself on this pedestal and saying, I am the one to be served. And it can be kings, it can be politicians, it can be, pick your person, movie stars, whatever. And everyone else are just the little people or the people who aren't really people. They're just there to bring me what I want. And I have to do nothing for them. Well, that, that tugs immediately at the sense of injustice, and it engenders a certain, a certain resentment.
Well, when someone treats another human being that way, you're supposed to get that for me, or, what does your opinion matter? How could you understand any of that? You feel used.
And abused.
Mm-hmm. And that's the issue. I mean, when a society is based on, well, you have no value unless you're usable, it is pure objectification. You are not treated as a human being with your own soul and your own life and your own experiences. You're supposed to defer everything over to whoever this person is, who's claimed that they are superior to you, and give in to every request or whim or thought. Very, very draining. That's the other thing. Energetically, if you feel like you've been used by someone, you feel like there's a piece of your life force taken right out of you. And in fact, energetically, that's what happens. The other person winds up getting a hit off your energy because they feel like they've got one up on you. And then they feel good. And it's very parasitic.
This is a very good point. And it's the very third chakra. If we talked about this, and we talk about this quite a bit, but the third chakra is the power chakra.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with these types. If you're in a third chakra-based relationship, it's what's known as a power over, power under type of relationship, where you are trying to exert dominance or you're being dominated. And those are both third chakra types of relationships. If you're, and this requires, the human being is equally as powerful as any other human being, equally as valuable as any other human being. When you have these egoic power over, power under relationships, it requires the permission. It requires even unconscious permission for the other to dominate, for this parasitic relationship to occur. So, in many of these, societal relationships where there's a class which is given the idea of a superior, of a must be deferred to, must be served person, whether this is the head of a state or the head of a realm or whatever it may be, and then the ones who are subservient as a matter of societal strictures, as a matter of sort of the hierarchy of the society. So you're incarnate as a human being, and then made into this sort of class structure where there's an inherent privilege given to one and an inherent obligation given to another. These always end up as fractured or visible types of societies. Very, very, you have a tremendous amount of resentment. You have a tremendous amount of potential for revolutions and that sort of thing. Why? Because what Margaret said, we feel intrinsically that we're being used. The human being knows at the heart level, which is at the fifth chakra, fourth chakra, at the heart level, you know that you're being your energy is being taken from you without recompense, and it goes to balance. Really, all these power structures that are parasitic or in some way this third chakra kind of dominance and subservience, they all are, in essence, transferring some life energy or some power from those who are obligated in this power structure to serve towards those who assume this superiority. The heart feels that and sees it instantly, and what we react to generally, what we refer to this as a sort of injustice and imbalance. There's an inherent imbalance here, an inherent parasitic nature, and there's the interesting thing about it is every parasite knows that it's dependent upon its host and hates it. You can always see that when a power over dominance and power under type of relationship is established, both sides are actually dissatisfied. Those who are in power become more and more cruel, and they become more and more inured and try to even dominate further and further and further because there's some lack there. They know that they're not independent. They know that they're not whole, that they're not actually beings. And those who are being dominated feel the same. They know that they're being fed off of. And that injustice grows and grows. And what eventually in a relationship between two people, that relationship is going to end. In a society where you have this type of relationship amongst many large groups of people, that society is going to fly apart mm-hmm. because the imbalance eventually becomes too much.
Yes. Well, the human spirit is free, and it knows that. So when it's been put upon that this particular behavior or accommodation is expected of you, mm-hmm. You have to do this for me or for that group, or you said you were part of this This group, well, they expect you to do this then. And no one asked your permission to participate. They assume that you're just going to be there and have their hands wide open. All right, give it to us. It's a prison. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Agreeing to that, you intuitively know this is a prison. You are being dictated to on what you can and cannot do. And your worth, again, we go back to you're only useful to this group if you do as they tell you or what's expected of you. You have no worth otherwise. So it's playing upon that need that human beings have for the interaction with another, to be part of a relationship, some kind of relationship. But when you see that you're being used, it's not really a relationship anymore. You've become a thing, not a person. And you have every right at that point to just call the whole thing off. No, I am not a thing. And if you can't respect me for being who I am, then you don't have to participate. As simple as that. No one can force you to participate, especially if you see it clearly. Now, it's different if for some reason you think that, well, this is the way we've always done things. This is how we were raised. We're supposed to do it this way.
Those are the bars of the prison. Well, let's, you know what, we've gone kind of down a path here, and it's very interesting that we've done this, but I want to come back a little bit to our original theme, which is...
Sure.
So, this being the zeitgeist of people in these types of relationships, so we've seen the toxic side of it, but there is a sort of a better way this works out, and the better way it works out was what Margaret just referred to, is that when there is a reciprocity of a relationship, when you bring to a relationship, we've talked about this in the past, people think, well, I'll bring my half and they'll bring their half and together we'll be a whole. Well, that never works. And the reason it doesn't work is that neither one of those fragmentary people is able to be a reciprocal, full being in the relationship. In true relationships, either amongst people or when people interact with each other via, let's call them tokens of some sort, either objects or things that represent objects, as long as you maintain balance. So when you have a person with whom you want to have a relationship, and it's an inherently being-to-being relationship, you both have particular skills and capabilities, you're both completely unique, and you are independent. So the relationship is one of choice, not one of, as in a parent to a child relationship. The child doesn't choose to be helpless, it just is helpless, and that's an accepted part of that relationship. You know that this one cannot, it cannot equally give back exactly what it's getting. You know, you can't say, well, I'm going to cook a meal for you today, and you cook the meal tomorrow. Well, that's not going to work out because this one's an infant and they're not tall enough to reach the stove. The point being, though, is that when you have an actual relationship amongst beings who are both independent beings, it will work perfectly well. It works exceedingly well at both the heart level and all the chakra levels if you interact in a balanced way. Now, that does not mean, and some people take it this way, that if I give you a pencil, I want a pencil back. And I want the exact same pencil back. So we trade the pencil back and forth. Here you go, here you go, here you go. No, each one of us has unique things to bring to a relationship. But the value of what, let's say, I bring to a relationship and to the person that I'm relating to is that I have my own unique skills, abilities, ways of interacting, etc. And if I find someone with whom of whom I value the exact sort of same things, what they bring to the relationship, and whatever that is, it can be very, very different. This person can bring amazingly different abilities and insights and value, but we find value in each other. We are both bringing a one and a one, a whole and a whole to the relationship. The relationship itself is greater than the two together. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. We've said this in the past. It's in a true relationship, 1 + 1 = an infinite amount, an undefined amount of energy comes from that, or an undefined amount of value comes from that. It also tends to not be limited to either space or time. The relationship of one to one expands throughout your whole life. It expands beyond your corporeal existence, etc. This type of relationship in either individuals or in societies or in even economic systems works beautifully because nobody feels that they're being used. No one feels as though I'm giving and not getting, or I'm getting all the time and never having to give. The true relationship of being to being is a balanced one, in essence. It's not exactly grain for grain, sand grain for sand grain balance. So the scales never move. No, the scales are always moving like the yin yang moves, but it's in perfect balance. It's in harmony. In those types of relationships, and this is what I want to get back to, we've gone round and round and round, there's an abundance and there's a gratitude. Those two things are part of the flow. There's an abundance of one and there's the abundance of the other. And the thing that they exchange is of themselves, whatever they do or whatever they give. And the gratitude is the acceptance and the appreciation, and it furthers the abundance.
It's a flow.
It's a flow.
If one gives and the other receives, and then it's reverse. The other gives and the one receives. And it's a definition of what relationship actually is. So if one is continually giving and not receiving, the phrase we always used was a one-sided relationship.
Yeah.
And it dies pretty quickly when it's a one-sided like that. It can't necessarily grow. When the byplay happens, this back and forth, you can expect not just this flat circular spinning of a wheel. All right, it becomes a spiral movement because moving through time allows you to experience the relationship in different places, different areas, different situations, and it builds, and it continues to build. So you wind up leveling up with every relationship you have, good or bad, doesn't matter. The experience accumulation, the appreciation of what the lessons have been. You're learning not only about yourself, you're learning about others, and others are learning from you.
Mm.
So overall, an accumulation of experience and energy. If the relationship is a flow, caring flow, then it is a love relationship. And can only grow if it's a true loving relationship. If it's one-sided and you got one who's very selfish, narcissistic, and they feel that it should be in orbit around them, hydrogen atom, and that's all you do is you're supposed to spin around this one person, you're not getting anywhere. You're, if anything, the one person keeps taking from you. And where are you in that mix? You begin to lose yourself. Maybe that's the best way to put it. If you're constantly giving out and out and out, and let's face it, we all know people who are constantly giving. Inevitably, they fall flat because they're tired. Or, gee, why do I feel so depressed? It's because there was no replenishment for them. It was always constantly giving one way. And it may not be just to one person. It may be, say, to a whole family unit. And all they do is just continually give out to everybody else without everyone else giving back. And we've all seen people like that. It wears not only on your heart and your soul, but your body winds up breaking down with that kind of stress. It's not a healthy place to be. And that person has to make the decision that they won't do that anymore because they value their own life enough to fortify themselves. The phrase is, you can't give what you don't have. So if you've given everything out, there's nothing else for you to give.
Yeah, I want to come back to what you just said, too. Very, very, very subtle point, but a very, very important point, is that let's say that this is a relationship that you find yourself in, and many people can find themselves in these relationships where it's imbalanced, where you feel used and abused, and you don't maybe necessarily know how to rectify that. The first acknowledgement that you have to make in this relationship is that you, particularly you, have to claim back the permission that you're giving this other to use you. You have to, in essence, realize that no one person can actually force you to give up yourself. You give the permission. Now, people say, well, no, I have to. No, this is a mask. These are both egoic positions, Margaret. They're both the one who takes all the time and the one who gives all the time are both in essence, a form of a pain body, a form of an egoic relationship. The one who's receiving all the time and feeling that he never has to, that they never have to give back, you could say is the narcissist. But the other one is the enabler. And both of them are positions which eventually will cause damage and do cause damage to them, to their own beings. So these are both identities. They both identify with I'm always the one who gives, and they resent it. And the one who always gets is saying, well, I'm always the one who's supposed to get, but they're always needy. They're never satisfied. This part of the toxicity of always getting is that you're never satisfied. You always feel empty. You never feel fulfilled. So both of those are egoic positions. To get out of them, you have to claim back this idea that you're giving permission to, that you're acquiescing to this giving. Or in the same sense, in the case of the narcissist, you have to say, well, the emptiness that I can never be satisfied. I have to understand that is the toxicity. That there is no way out of that except to acknowledge that everything that I have, not what I lack. So if we're taking them in pieces, and maybe the one who gives first. The permission, even though it says, well, I have to give, if you look at it from the point of view of identity, you've identified yourself with one who is used, with one who enables, with one who gives all the time. And almost to the point of Margaret, what Margaret said earlier, is that I feel that this is my role. This is who I am. Mm-hmm. If I don't do it, they'll all die. It becomes this sort of, well, I can't not give it to them because they'll instantly expire. This is part of. I'm going to actually hurt someone if I don't give. Right. You bring back, and the only way out of that is in essence to sometimes it's to come to the end of oneself, giving to the point of exhaustion. But if you can stop that, just say, well, see what you have. This is what I have, and you see what the other has. Clearly, they don't need you to give. You're actually hurting them. You're giving your permission to be used. Every time someone comes to you and says, "I need," you say yes because you're afraid to say no, perhaps, or you think, well, if I say no this one time, it's going to cause them to be destroyed. I'm going to be the bad,
or I'm going to be bad, or I'm going to be disappointment.
Right. So the and we haven't really touched upon, but Tolle's quote comes in here. The idea that in this sort of a toxic, egoic relationship where I am the enabler and they are the receiver, they're always empty, and I am too. Even though they're getting all the time, the emptiness is that they're never satisfied, and that I'm giving all the time, and the emptiness is I never receive anything back. I'm constantly exhausted. The only way out of that is to acknowledge right now that I have the power to say no, that this person does not need me to be there for their continued existence, that both of us will continue to exist even if I don't enable them, and that the
even though they try to convince you otherwise,
that in essence this idea that
I need you,
my being is sacrosanct. You have to call that back to yourself. Say, no, the relationship that I'm in right now is an egoic relationship. The relationship that I need to be in right now is with my own being, and the other, that severing of that enabling is going to cause them pain, but you cannot. You cannot realize that you have to realize rather that the enabling is much worse for them. And on the other side, the people who have been in this position of feeling that they're getting everything they want, they're never satisfied because all they see, rather than any kind of satisfaction, is it's always lack. It's what I don't have. I'm hungry. I need this entertainment. I need this to be done for me. I need this. I need this. I need this. It's constantly need, which means you're only looking at lack. Both sides, in essence, have to use what we can talk about Tolle's quote, but both sides have to acknowledge that what I have is enough. That the true abundance comes from acknowledgement of that which is right now. It doesn't have to be something which I don't have, or it doesn't have to be something which I must give instantly and that I can't keep for myself. If you look at that imbalance, the first thing you have to do is stop. You have to stop.
Right.
Stop being the enabler, or stop taking from everyone all around you,
or giving to whoever it is you've decided you had to give to.
Right.
You have the ability to choose where your energy is going. Doesn't matter what anyone else says. It's your energy. You're producing it. You can say no. And the interesting part about that is that you don't have to fight with the other person to do this. You just don't participate. No response. Even though they'll start throwing fits, spitting poison, because you're not getting what they want. They're throwing a hissy fit. Okay, well, that's your response, and this is mine. And you walk away. You think, really not to engage at all. You don't have to say a word. Just, you can turn around and leave. And basically expect that there's going to be this response being thrown at you. But if you don't feed it, it has nothing to throw. No ammo.
Right. You disarm the other ego.
Basically, yes. There's
because
nothing.
It needs... this is a great point, is that you're handing them something to throw at you.
Right.
And if you don't hand it to them, they can't throw it at you.
Right. Pretty much. If you can pretend that they're like a 4-year-old having a fit because they want what they want, and you're like, no, that's it. And you walk away, or you just, no is no. And that's the other interesting thing. It's becoming very familiar with the energy of no. That kind of no, everybody understands. There's no negotiation. There is no chance of breaking through. It's just no. And it's something that you have to practice, because if someone feels like they can, maybe if I throw this reasonable, air quotes, reasonable thing at you, you'll consider it and you'll re-engage. That's what you got to understand. That's a verbal re-engagement. And you don't need to participate with it. You just say no. No. Because we had a little sign on the wall for the kids. No was a complete sentence.
And you're doing them both. You're doing yourself a favor, and you're doing the other a favor. And Margaret, it's interesting that those who give constantly are in the actual powerful position, if you will.
Yes.
Because if you are constantly expecting to be catered to, even though you feel this, why does that position, although it looks strong, is inherently weak? Because it has no ability to produce anything on its own. It's actually atrophied its own ability to feed itself. It's atrophied, or its own ability to feed itself is almost non-existent. Its own ability to exist, to continue, at least it's told itself. This is why the person who is completely dependent, who wants everything done for them, it's why they feel so empty, and why they feel always the lack and always the resentment. Because in fact, at the heart level, at the level of the fourth chakra, they realize that they are weak, that they are dependent, and that they are in constant fear of anyone calling them out on it. When those who provide for those who cannot do for themselves say no, the shrieking and it comes from fear. There's an existential fear, because those who do not know how to do for themselves know it at a truth level, that without the ones who feed them, and without the ones who take care of them, and without the ones who provide them their very existence and energy and try to meet every need, that they will very quickly have to do for themselves or cease to exist. So this is a very weak position to be in.
Well, it's interesting, because in this society, generous people are perceived as weak. It's all, well, that person always just gives, so they must be weak. And it's fascinating, because you can't give unless you are from, a standpoint of strength. And that assumption that you're weak, it's very interesting to me, because when you're giving and then you realize that you feel used, that's when you understand that that person perceives you as weak and believes that they can take anything they want from you. And you can just look at them and say, no.
It's with your permission whether you realize it or not. So the strength, the person who gives all the time is only doing that because they're giving the permission first. So when somebody comes to you and asks for whatever it is, and you feel that you cannot say no, it's egoic. It's identity that says, oh, I can't say no because they need me. That's the ego. That's the identity that the persona that's been kind of put around you.
That's the Asian society is built that way, guys.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you're perceived as having something, you are expected to be generous, which means that you're supposed to be feeding them continually. Well, we can't do it for ourselves. You have to do it for us. Why? Because we're your family, or we're related to you in some way, shape, or form. And it's like, no, you guys don't understand. I don't play that game. And they look at you like, how dare you? How dare you? You know, you're a disgrace.
But there's fear there.
Well, they throw all these things at you, hoping that you will receive the shame that they want to throw on you. So that if you receive that shame, then they can manipulate you. That's the handle they're trying to put on you, is that handle of shame, so they can just carry you around and you can do whatever they want because they're going to shame you into it.
Right.
And it's horrible. I don't know if anyone else has felt that kind of heaviness of shame when it's put on you. And it's not put on you not just by your family, but, say, a whole society.
Right.
Horrible.
And this is, reminds me, you mentioned Asian societies, the story of the monk, the one with the is that. So we've gone into this, but just very briefly, a monk does something which is something which should shame him, or rather he's accused of something very shameful. And the accusation alone is supposed to, in essence, make him their slave. You must do everything that we say. You must do exactly what we do, and all these things because you've been shamed. So this is the societal way of forcing an egoic identity upon someone and trapping them, putting them into sort of a prison, and that they have to do everything you want because the shame alone is enough to. But the way out and the claiming back of that particular story is that the monk says, is that so? So what that is, the phrase doesn't sound like much, but what it really is saying that, yes, here is something which needs to be done. So you accept the situation as it occurs. There's a situation here. In this case, it was a child, an innocent, who needed to be taken care of. And regardless of the truth or falsity of the shame or the accusations, the monk really replied to them with, is that so? So is that the truth? And I know it's not, regardless of what you say. I know what the actual truth is. Yet, accepting the current situation is saying, well, this innocent must be taken care of, as well as you're actually still claiming the power back. You're not saying to the other that you're right or that you're wrong. In both cases, Margaret mentioned earlier, in both cases, you're validating the accusation if you either protest it or acquiesce to it.
Right.
But if you literally any response, but if your response is just, is that so? It's not a response as much as it is a question. It's a deflection to reality. It's saying, yes, I hear you, but is that so? Well, that's claiming back the power. That's the being saying, yes, the reality of the situation, you have your viewpoint, I can see that. The reality of the situation is what it is. There may be an innocent here who needs to be taken care of, and that's acceptance of the current situation. But the being itself is not trapped. And you're not giving energy to the accusation. You're not feeding the egoic pain body of the other, and you're not trapping yourself either. So in the relationship of you're always giving, someone comes to you and says, yeah, I need this. You have to do it for me. If you don't do it for me, I'll die. And you say, Margaret's wonderful, no. Well, that does two things. The no is, no, you won't die. No, you don't need this. And no, I'm not going to give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that puts you back into the position of, I am, my own being. I choose, and I always have had the choice whether I give it or not. If I choose to give, I will give. If I choose not to, I will not. You have no control over me. You no longer have me in a prison of shame or a prison of any type where you can demand and I must give. Because then you're no longer a being. You're a chattel. You're a slave. And
you're an object.
You may accept in the moment of now, you may say, yes, in this case, I must give because they will die. I can see that, or they won't. But it's always my choice. Once you understand that you've made a choice, the choice is always mine to give or to not give. Then, in giving, you understand that I'm doing it because I determine that I want to do this, and if I don't want to, I will not. This is a very different relationship because no longer does the other have power over you. You merely have power over yourself and over the situation. And the one who has the lack, they very quickly, if they're still caught in that egoic mindset, they leave because they're not getting what they want. They're getting the reality, and the reality is, I'll give it to you if I want to.
Right.
And the only reason when I give it to you is you may take it, but you owe me something, and this is on sufferance, nothing more. Those who assume that they are owed something all the time and that they're supposed to get it all the time, when you tell them no, or you tell them I'll give it to you, but only because I want to, they leave very quickly because that exposes their weakness. I'm giving it to you because I want to, because I see that you're needy and incapable, not powerful and deserving. That's a very different...
It is a decision that you make in the now.
Yes.
You will know whether or not you participate or you do not, and then how you participate. And I don't think we've read the quote.
Let's do that at the very end because of the anticipation.
Oh, okay. Well, going back to that understanding that you have the ability to make the choice, and you have the ability to choose how you see a situation, because choice is very strong. Your will is very strong. When you look at a situation and acknowledge that there's good in this situation, you see that there's good points to this, and you're going to stick only to the good points, then that's the foundation of your decision in your moment of now. And always concentrating on that. There is some good here. You might have to look really hard to find it, but there is. And it's a mind switch. That's the thing. You choose with a mind switch.
Right, because in the is that so situation, everything that the other seemed to want, he's getting, or they're getting. But they know they're not getting it because they demanded it. They know they're getting it only because the other said, okay, I'll do it right now because it needs to be done. So anyways, you want to read Tolle's quote right at the end here?
Sure. Acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. Well, that's Tolle.
That's Tolle, and that's exactly what we're saying. When you see that what you already have, you're in a being state. You're saying this is the moment of now. Even if what you have is not what you want, it is what you have, and that's abundance. And then if you don't look at it as lack, and don't look at it what I don't have, you'll never feel as though you're lacking.
Yes. We've reached the end of our hour.
Lacking time.
So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
Thank you for listening.